Hello world, I'm Chris Pirillo, and you've tuned into another live Q&A with you and me, streamed live on YouTube every single day based on the questions that you are asking. If you want to tune in live and get tons of other bonuses starting at just $2 a month, head over to chrispirillo.com. That's our Patreon campaign. That's the easiest way to do it today, as well as to support these endeavors, because obviously you keep asking me questions, and I'm very, very happy to answer them. Today's question is I will continue. Is Ubuntu still cool? Yeah, I would say that's it in a nutshell. This question was asked last week during the AMA roundup, and I thought it would be good to kind of talk a bit about Ubuntu. Back in the day, and we're talking way back in the day, like before I really even started using OS X, certainly before the iPhone existed, Ubuntu was a big deal. There was a dream, and I suppose the dream is still alive, that Linux would take over the desktop. This is going to be the year for Linux on the desktop, and many companies tried, and many individuals tried, and I'm not sitting here saying that Linux doesn't belong on the desktop. It does. It absolutely fits right into the desktop paradigm. It's great on the desktop. It works well on the desktop. But unfortunately, I think the desktop in general is kind of on its way out. Now, that's not to say that Linux doesn't have its place in the ecosystem. In fact, a lot of great projects have been based on the efforts from the entire community of Linux supporters. Ubuntu is just one, right? You know, you had several distributions, still have several distributions. I'm not even going to say that my first Linux experience was Ubuntu, because it wasn't. I know a lot of people's first experiences with Ubuntu was, Linux outright was Ubuntu. Mine was Knoppix. I booted a live CD distro from a computer that I had well over a decade ago that was running Windows 98 at the time. It was a long time ago. Certainly Linux has evolved, but these days a lot of the appeal of computers isn't necessarily in desktops or laptops. It's specifically in portables. Not like luggables, like classic laptop computers, which are luggable by comparison. We're talking about smartphones and or tablets. It was a year or two ago that they started to make a distribution of Ubuntu specifically, or I guess a derivation of Ubuntu, specifically optimized for tablet use. And we're just now starting to see Ubuntu in mobile devices very, very new-ish, and I don't know if any of them are going to necessarily take off commercially. That's not to say that Ubuntu has lost its cool factor. I don't think so at all. I just think that the world has kind of moved on from the desktop computing paradigm more into the world of this kind of computing paradigm. And I know, some people say, that's not a computer, it's a phone. Really? Then why do I never want to make calls on this thing? I avoid making calls. I use apps all the time. Hello, software, hardware. It's a computer, people. So, if anything would make Ubuntu sexy, it's reasserting its dominance in terms of not just Linux in general, but usability. The idea of open source taking over the world, I think, is a great idea, and I think eventually, inevitably, a lot of the software we use is going to be open source. A lot, if not all. I think open source is the future. Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind it's the way it's going to be. However, in today's environment and the way that we use software and services and hardware all together, open source isn't always a big fat win just because it's quote-unquote free. It's not. That's not the end-all be-all. Ubuntu was cool because it made Linux easy to use. The question is, can Ubuntu reassert that kind of, wow, it made Linux easy to use in a world where Android kind of works well enough for a lot of people? So Ubuntu doesn't just have to be better than iOS. Its true competitor would likely be in Android, more than anything. Much like Ubuntu's competitor back in the day might have been, let's say, Red Hat, SUSE, any one of the distros that people just loved, and I'm not even talking about, those would be the distributions that the hardcore would laugh at. Well, you run Ubuntu? But everybody does that inside of everybody else's community. You run that Android device? You run that iPhone? People do that all the time, especially nerds and geeks. They just have a problem with this. So I'm not going to say that Ubuntu's lost its cool. I think that desktops have lost their cool. I'm not going to lose my cool over this. I don't care. I have no horse in this race. I think that Ubuntu is evolving the way it needs to. In what I've seen, because I haven't actually used beyond it was a very early alpha kind of test of what Ubuntu could be on my Nexus 7 eons ago. I installed that on the Nexus 7, and it seemed cool. And in what I've seen with the way that Ubuntu's approaching today's environment, computing environment, specifically in tablets and smartphones, they are not focusing on apps necessarily, more like individual experiences or... Pardon, it's been a while since I've looked at screenshots. I think they call them scopes. Like the idea of tabs or several pages you can flip through and different experiences, like a music type of experience and like a video type of experience and a social type of experience, instead of having to rely on individual apps, which they even know walking into this race that they're just not going to win. That's a very, 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 very steep uphill battle for anybody to face or any endeavor to face. But if Ubuntu does well, stands well enough on its own, I think it still has cool. As to how cool it is, just depends on what you want from your device. And if you're an open source advocate, is Android working well enough for you to turn your attention away from Ubuntu and more focusing more on what Android's doing for you? Like a lot of endeavors that used to be way more cool than they are today, the industry changes. And but I'm at the same time, I'm not going to say that Ubuntu is not cool anymore. I think it is still cool. I think it's amazing. I think it's a good approach to what Linux could be, or how Ubuntu still has a role to play in this ecosystem of mobile computing experiences and devices. Like I say, the more competition we have, the better. That's what keeps every one of these experiences getting better and better and better for everybody. So whether or not you're a Linux fan or, a fan of Ubuntu, you still run Ubuntu, what I'm saying is that they're kind of forced to change. They're evolving. I have yet to hold a new type of Ubuntu experience in my hands. I've only seen screenshots. I honestly couldn't even tell you a general availability. And even if it was generally available, the question is it going to work on your device? I don't know. I really don't know. Is it optimized for one device over another? Most likely, because that's the best way to provide an experience. But I've been saying that for years. To me, if you want to run Linux, usually, more often than not, you're on your own. There are companies who can support you, absolutely. And there are great communities that will help you along. Very, very wonderful people out there inside the community. Wonderful people who are there to help you if you are interested. But for the most part, you're probably going to be, if you try it today without any official supports, you're probably going to be on your own, which is fine if you want to do that. That's cool. That is cool if you want to do that. The average consumer, I don't know. That's a completely different story. But I'd be curious to know of the people out there today, are you still running Ubuntu on the desktop? If so, why? Why are you running Ubuntu instead of any other Linux distribution? Where do you think Ubuntu needs to go? What can they do to possibly regain relevance on the desktop? I've long believed that, and this was actually, I wrote an article back when I wrote for CPU Magazine, that I believed a Linux distribution need to be created specifically optimized for gaming. Along comes Valve with the Steam OS, and I'm like, I was saying this, I wrote this like a decade ago. Over a decade ago, I swear, that there needed to be a Linux distro that was optimized for gaming. SteamOS, ... Well, where does Ubuntu fit in there? I don't know. Just curious to know what you think. I think it's still cool. That doesn't mean that I'm running it. Then again, I know of cool things that I don't have and don't need and don't want and don't use, and it doesn't make it any less cool. Back when I was in school, I was not cool. Out of school, I'm still not cool. People still talk about me, even though I'm not cool. Definitely never going to be as cool as Ubuntu. Absolutely not. Thank you for asking the questions that you've been asking. I did my best to answer it best I possibly can. I think coolness comes down to you. Do you think it's cool? Doesn't matter what other people think. It matters what you think. And if you love it enough to kind of spread the word of something being awesome, you're its best advocate. If you think it's cool, guess what? It's cool. If you don't think I'm cool, guess what? Well, I don't care. I do care about you, though. I love you. I appreciate you. But at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices.